You're wondering why I'm starting like that. We have to deliver a line for the Godfather here. You're looking at me like, hey, what the fuck are you doing?
I'm like, what the fuck's happening?
We're playing music, DeForest. Shut the fuck up. But we had to get a little Godfather in there because the big story in sports is kind of circulating with some Godfather characteristics and elements, as in the line, Tattaglia is a pimp. It was Barzini all along. And that's what we believe about this whole Shohei Ohtani thing. Man, what a dog and pony show that was yesterday. That was unbelievable. Okay, no questions. No, don't even bother talking to this guy. You don't speak English anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, the new interpreter's on the phone with this guy Boyer, and as they say, hey, listen, I want Iowa -7. I don't know what's going on with that. We lead the league here in South Florida. Good morning, everybody, by the way. Jeff DeForest, Mike Lubitz with you. Happy to be with you here on nofilter.net. And, of course, Caffeine TV, our various other platforms with another edition of the morning briefing. And I don't know how brief you can be this morning because there's so many different wild things taking place. But we're in Fugazi City here. We originate from, you could call this, most people would refer to this area as Miami, would they not, Lubie?
Yes.
It's like, hey, where you live? And you say Lauderdale by the sea. They say, go fuck yourself. You say Miami, they know, okay, it's that little spot down there at the end of the big penis that is the state of Florida. And it's right there before you get to the southernmost point that you can get to, right there, Key West. It's all the same. It's all encompassing. But could easily be Fugazi City because this is the scam capital of the universe. So we're very familiar with these kind of situations and circumstances and alibis and cover-ups and all of this stuff that could possibly go wrong, or where you sort of smell a rat, don't you, at this stage? Shohei Ohtani seems like a very refined and respectable individual. You can't help but root for the guy, can you? I have to say, I don't know if this is some kind of bizarre bias going all the way back to D-Day and World War II, but I haven't been the biggest fan of Japanese pitchers coming to America. Have you, Lubie? What do you think? Every time you hear about one of these guys, Daisuke is going to be the greatest thing that ever happened since Koufax. You're like, all right, you go see the guy, has a season or two where he's all right. We've had a few guys be successful. How'd that thing work out for the Dodgers in Yamamoto on their opening day, their official opening day?
Nomo years ago, I feel like was the first one, and he was really good for 2-3 years. Like that's the thing is, Daisuke was really good. Darvish was really good. They all come in with pomp and circumstance, and a couple years they're like, oh shit, because they all have weird throwing motions that fuck everyone up. But then eventually, the game catches up with them, and they become nice pitchers, but they're not like multiple Cy Young winner kind of guys, even though they get paid.
Throwing forkballs and weird stuff. I mean, stuff that just drops off the table there. They all look like El Duque at some point. Although Shohei Ohtani, being a two-way player, I mean, exceptional. You didn't know if you were getting Don Drysdale or Sadaharu. Oh, you're getting both in one guy. Yes. Pretty incredible. So an easy guy to embrace, a likable figure. The fact that he's actually accomplished things, it's sort of a little like the LeBron James thing, where LeBron James, the hype was so enormous as this guy was coming into the NBA that you couldn't imagine that anybody could possibly live up to this level of expectation. And then to see a guy go and exceed that by miles. Yeah, is always an entertaining aspect of being a sports fan. And I think Shohei Ohtani has certainly done that. So a lot of people around the world, and even people that might have been, I don't want to say anti-Japanese, we certainly weren't that, Lubie, but you're thinking, okay, so the Dodgers signed themselves another fucking stiff. Well, this was the Angels in the case of Ohtani coming to America, because he is now a Dodger. And the fact that he was wearing this Dodger uniform, I mean, one of the most respectable organizations in all of sports, I can speak to that. I don't know if it's still the same. I would have to assume that they have continued to kind of operate in a similar fashion, even though they've gone through changes in ownership. But the Dodgers, when I was covering sports out in Los Angeles, a first-class organization. I mean, one of the best sports organizations I've ever dealt with. And I've been all over the country. Lubie, you have too. You've dealt with a lot of different people in PR departments, team executives, general managers, players. The Dodgers were always the epitome of class. They were everything that you wanted an organization to be if you were going to deal with them. Just in any business, you would have said, wow, this is the way to do it. So here's Ohtani sitting there with the uniform on that I believe is a great distinction, in spite of the fact that they just up and left Brooklyn when I was 5 years old. But I was too young to really understand what the hell was going on in that transaction. And he's telling you, I mean, the whole Colonel Klink thing. I knew nothing. And nobody has a chance to question it. There's something a little bit out of balance there, isn't there? Right? Who was running this press conference? Pete Rose. Pete Rose actually put a video out, and we've been advocating for years that Pete Rose become the commissioner of the National Football League. But now I think he very much needs to replace Rob Manfred as the commissioner of Major League Baseball if he's going to have to deal with issues like this, where you're trying to convince people to believe an insane story. Well, we've had it. I mean, we are Fugazi City here in South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first big press conferences I ever attended here in South Florida was when Ron Rothstein, then the head coach of the Miami Heat, he had just achieved his dream job after years of working in the background behind Chuck Daly and the great Detroit Pistons. He was the guy, the architect of the bad boy defense. He's the guy that told Lambeer, hey, put him in a headlock and then give him a noogie. That was his method of teaching defense. It was none of this. Hands up. Come on, hands up and move your feet. It was no, pick him up, airplane spin, body slam him to the ground. He wasn't even showing films, Ron Rothstein, of basketball games. But when he was coaching the defense, he would have a film session and show Bruno Sammartino beating the shit out of Gorilla Monsoon. It was great. So he gets his dream job. He becomes a head coach in the NBA after years and years of toiling in the background as a well-respected assistant. And supposedly after a couple of seasons, he walks into the office of Billy Cunningham and Shifty Lou Chappelle and says, you know what? This is getting to me. I'm having a nervous breakdown. I want to quit so you can bring your friend Kevin Lockery in off the golf course here and have him coach the team and get no better results than I was getting because I have shitty players.
Exactly.
And they have him standing up there almost in tears with his wife in the background and pictures of his kids and his grandchildren. And they're all sobbing and saying, well, we have to save Ron. And you're supposed to believe that. And then later on, one of the most bogus press conferences I ever witnessed in my life was when Don Shula supposedly decided to step down in the midst of his quest to become a Super Bowl champion again, where they had done everything in their power, the Miami Dolphins, to try and give him the players and the ingredients, the elements, the components that he needed to be successful. And supposedly, he just decided one day after having an epiphany, he's sitting in his living room watching TV, and all of a sudden he says, you know what? I ought to resign and give the job to Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah,
he guy that I despise. No questions. No questions. So we're still being asked to believe something that seems to be preposterous, Lubie. I don't know how you feel about it, but with each passing day, it seems more and more bizarre. Now, they've painted the picture of this Matsuhara as a compulsive liar also. How is it, though, that the California Angels, the Los Angeles Angels now, how is it that, don't you vet somebody out if they're going to be around a guy that you just invested $500 million in?
Yes. That's the story and it's what we've talked about. The story they're going with makes them look bad, though. And that's what it'll protect them. It protects the face, and he is the face of the game. It protects the face of the game from being eliminated from the game.
How enormous is this? If this guy gets suspended, Lubie, it's insane.
So that's what they're doing. They're trying to do everything they can to make sure he doesn't get suspended. But the results are, on the other hand, they look dumb as fuck. It's like, okay, it's again, and we like Rick Pitino. We've become friendly with him. We've been at his events, and he's been in our freaking studio.
Yes.
So we are biased toward Rick Pitino. And even we were like, it's a little weird that he would know nothing. Like, either way, it's bad. Either he...
When you were in FSU, Lubie, and you heard that there was a panty raid going on in some women's dormitory, you were aware of it no matter what side of the campus you were on.
Yes.
Right? You're going to tell me that the basketball coach, the head basketball coach at Louisville, who, and we see how these guys operate. They are on top of virtually everything. They don't miss a single detail, and they remember everything from 100 years ago.
Yep.
They remember there was a speck of dust on the free throw line when they happened to step up there for that game-winning shot when they were 14 and in high school. Like, they remember every detail. They're on top of everything. I've never seen anything like it. I wish I was half as organized as some of these college basketball coaches. And you're going to tell me Rick Pitino didn't know that there were hookers in the freshman dormitory?
That's the thing. It's either you've fallen asleep at the job. So it's bad either way. And that's my problem with this is you pick the lane that saves Ohtani's career, fine. But it still doesn't make any, like, the whole thing sounds fucking ludicrous.
It sounds preposterous.
Worse. Some of the stuff yesterday, Ohtani's like, yeah, I hadn't heard of it at all until 2 weeks ago. I'm like, okay, then what is the story? The story every day is changing. And that's literally the symptom of someone doing something wrong. Like, you're only changing the story. If the truth, again, a lot of the time the truth is hard to believe, But if the truth is simple and Otani's not involved at all, that would have been the story from day fucking one.
Yeah.
Why is it emerging differently every day? Like,
How mysteriously, I don't care what kind of access this guy had, Matsuhara, to Otani's bank accounts, but how is it possible that he had the authority to go ahead and transfer $4.5 million out of his account to some bookmaker? I mean, it just seems impossible. And then the other side of the story, I think, is what really blows this whole thing up and makes the truth look very squirrely, at least the truth according to the Dodgers and Shohei Ohtani. And that is that this bookmaker, this Boyer, Matthew Boyer, who a couple of people that we have contact with actually know this guy.
mhm.
And supposedly the story is, and we've been saying this for the last couple of days, that it could have been as much as $25 million. And it was Shohei all along. As we said, it was Bartzini all along.
Yeah, supposedly.
That's a story that's out there, and that comes from sources that seem to be far more believable than this nonsense that, well, he knew about it and he gave the guy the $4.5 million. Oh no, he didn't know anything about it. The guy just robbed us. I mean, flat out fleeced him. He took a ski mask and a gun and went to Ohtani and said, "I need $4.5 million to pay off my soccer betting. Don't ask me any questions, all right, Shohei?
Yeah, come on.
Nothing." And it turns out that the guy was like a total clown. I mean, he was a farce. He nothing in his background added up. Now, people make up stuff all the time. Oh, yeah, I played for the Knicks. And unfortunately, you can Google everything.
Exactly. That's the thing is like the gambler, our friends, you are highly involved in this world. So from their perspective, there's two different angles, right? Okay, Shohei put off the money like Bobby Bonilla, a degenerate's not doing that.
Yeah.
Sure. But also, bookies, the bookies just go on the work. You have a friend that knows everyone. This guy that I still haven't met, that he has every story known to fucking man. Like, well, Shohei's my dude. I don't give a fuck if Shohei, like, because he tells the bookie Shohei is his guy, that doesn't mean he's gonna
No,
get
no bookmakers
$4.5
fronting
million,
this clown. Yeah, $4.5 million.
How does he know the show? There's got to be some connection if it isn't Shohei that allows bookies are the most cynical. Like they don't just sure, John. Like,
You better have my money on Tuesday.
like, come on.
I know where your sister lives in Michigan. Exactly. That's the way that goes. Come on.
Like,
So interesting that the Dodgers were trying to pull this off in as farcical a fashion as it went yesterday, allow nobody to ask any questions, and just reiterate the revised story that they gave out after they realized that, oh, fuck, we can't say that Ohtani covered this guy's bets because he was a friend of his. I mean, one thing it could be, and I've had people come to me and say, hey, listen, I need money desperately. Don't ask me any questions. Actually, it ended up getting me in a jackpot many, many years ago. This very same syndrome. So you're asking yourself, how believable is it? But no bookmaker in the world is going to extend Shohei Ohtani, his interpreter, a guy that's just working for him, and no bookmaker in the world is going to extend this guy $4.5 million worth of credit. It's a veritable impossibility. And so to keep reiterating this story without any kind of explanation about how the guy got the money out of Ohtani's bank account without anybody knowing, not his lawyers, not his advisors, not his financial people, you would think that Ohtani, if he was ignorant about these sort of things himself, would at least have assembled some kind of a team. Now, part of the team was this interpreter. So this was a guy, it turned out, that apparently he couldn't trust, but story just doesn't add up. So that was a wild one yesterday. That was all part of the fanfare yesterday on the sporting scene. We were waiting for this, and it was much ado about nothing. That's a certainty when it came to getting any realistic answers. Pete Rose has already weighed in on this thing. He says, if I had an interpreter, I'd be back in baseball right now. I'd be managing the Reds. And that could be true. But gambling has created a situation with sports embracing it to the level that it has. It's not just that the sporting world has said, hey, listen, people are going to be betting on games. That's fine. But we don't want to get in bed with these guys. And of course, they wanted their cut. I want a piece. And so, sure enough, they went ahead, made all kinds of deals with DraftKings, FanDuel, various other betting applications and sites. And locations where you and like most of us, a fool can easily be separated from his money, including recommending these bizarre parlays where you're wagering on whether or not some guy that hasn't passed the ball in his lifetime is going to have more than a half an assist in a game, and that's the ninth element of a 10-team parlay that you've put together. So interesting stuff all the way around. Got the NCAA tournament. I'm struggling to come up with the winners in these games. Once again, it looks like the chalk jumps off the page, but a lot of points to be given away as you analyze the ball games that are coming up in the NCAA tournament. Arizona, a lot of people on the Arizona bandwagon now. They take on Clemson, which our friend, the professor, had deemed to be the ugliest team that he's ever seen in professional and/or college basketball history. Not because of the way they play, but physically, like these guys are just genuinely ugly. they all look like extras in some prison movie. Talking about Clemson movie. How ugly they are. The professor turned us on to that yesterday, and you know what? It's not an attractive bunch of guys. What was that guy? Was that guy that was with Oakland chucking the threes? Golke, was that his name?
Yes.
Was he really a 30-year-old dentist from Auburn Hills? What is going on in this sport? Well, who could possibly have any kind of a solid opinion when you don't know what you're dealing with anymore? You got Calipari with his 9-year-old kids, and they're going against guys that are in their 40s, or 40 and overly. Pretty amazing. Is there a game that stands out for you, Lubie? Everybody has UConn, once again, just steamrolling their way to the title. They take on San Diego State. That's a rematch of last year's championship game. How different are the two teams than they were a year ago? Do we have any idea, Louis? UConn seems to be very similar.
Yeah, San Diego State's nowhere near as good as they were. UConn is as good, if not better, somehow. I don't know. I think that I think Arizona's been better than they're getting credit. The UConn line, because we actually care about spreads here. The UConn line is ridiculous. I don't like 11 and a hook against a team that is pretty solid. San Diego State. Clemson, I don't think belongs there. I still don't. They've sort of just gotten a nice draw to get to this point. I think Arizona is going to dispatch them.
Yeah.
They're the ones I eventually picked to win it all. The rest of the games I think are going to be tight. Alabama's a good team. I think Carolina could struggle with them. Illinois, Iowa State. I think that should be.
Is NC State Cinderella now?
NC State is the Cinderella, and Marquette struggled. So I actually can see that being a good. And your guy Burns Jr. now, when you have a guy that like that gets hot and the team rides him and he plays on both ends of the floor, I wouldn't put it past that team to be in that game. Like the rest of the games, I feel like should be pretty close. It's that Arizona Clemson game, which is the one to me that stands out as like should be one of the easier plays for me.
Are we exhibiting our gender bias once again on the morning briefing by not mentioning Caitlin Clark?
She supposedly was great yesterday.
And worshiping Caitlin Clark. There's a story in the New York Post today about what a great passer Caitlin Clark is. She's a good ball player. I don't know. Does she deserve all this attention? South Carolina is blowing people out by like 25 points. Exactly. Number one team in the country, undefeated, going for a championship as a team that was much the best all season long. Nobody's talking about them. Do you have to be an asshole, too, to be a successful women's college basketball coach?
It feels like it. I mean...
Gino, I mean, he has no mercy for anybody. He's ridiculous, a big egomaniac, narcissistic putz. You got Mulkey, who is already pointing. She's become like the female college basketball version of Donald Trump. No, where it's just like, well, you know what? I'm going to tell you what. There's a story that's going to come out.
Don't listen.
Totally false. Story hasn't even come out yet. She's already making denials. That's kind of interesting. You know what? I don't think the election is fair unless I win. Exactly. Unbelievable. Where we've heard that before.
Exactly.
And Dawn Staley. I mean, Dawn Staley. Is she ever happy? This woman.
Yeah.
What happened to her? Somebody hit her with an bitterness brick or something. I don't know what the hell happened to her. She should be like euphoric, right? Great team, year after year after year. Unbelievable. All these accolades, and seems like she hates the world, doesn't she? Dawn Staley.
She's
always looks angry.
Pat Summitt was one that came off at least nice, but then when you heard supposedly she was a piece of work as well.
Boy, she hated Gino too. Wow, those two. That was unbelievable.
So I don't know. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's not like men's coaches are sweethearts.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it seems weird. You look at 3 of the top coaches in the game today, and all of them seem to be
very angry,
for lack of better terminology or characterization, assholes. All right. We didn't have much to say about the women's tournament, as you could see. Caitlin Clark and Iowa survived last night. They got a little bit of a scare out of West Virginia. And you have USC now. I think Bronny James must have had a sex change or something. Is playing for USC. All of a sudden, they're
really
great.
Good. Yeah, the women's team is really good.
You're thinking, what did Cheryl Miller come back? I don't know. But they're good now, and they won last night. So chalk seems to be rising to the top there in the women's tournament. All right, we have to run. Thanks so much for being with us. For Mike Lubitz, if you believe Shohei Ohtani at this point, you would believe anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to believe him, too. I want to believe that this story doesn't have the kind of unfortunate reflections that it would if the Major League Baseball people decided, hey, we're not going to do anything about this because we need this guy. And that he is beyond the scope of any level of integrity the game could ever hope to demonstrate. All right, we got to run. Thanks so much for being with us. For Mike Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. That's today's edition of the Morning Briefing.